Alright, top 20 greatest fragrances of all time, part 1. And we're doing a video of men's fragrances and unisex fragrances today. Some fragrances are discontinued, but this is a list of the greatest fragrances of all time. So there's definitely going to be fragrances that have come and gone from the world. So find out about my top 20 greatest fragrances of all time coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, we're talking about the greatest fragrances of all time. There's classics here, there's discontinued fragrances here, there's modern fragrances here, but all amazing fragrances that I'm a big fan of. So they're really great to smell, wear, everything. I think these are some of the best fragrances that were ever created. And I absolutely really love these fragrances. So we're going to talk about them, but before I get to the fragrances, as always, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So as I said, these are mostly men's or unisex. I will do a part 2 of feminine fragrances as well. Stay tuned for that video within the next month. Starting off at number 20, AZZARO pour Homme, launched in 1978. It's an aromatic fougere fragrance. Love the style. Absolutely love it. I guess when this launched, my dad was wearing it. I was probably around 9 or 10 years old, and it left a major impression. So I really enjoy the barbershop-y, spicy fougere, you know, herbal kind of fragrances. And this one definitely is a great representation of it. But this particular one also features anise. So I like that kind of licoricey vibe that's in here. But it features notes of lavender, anise, oakmoss, leather, vetiver, lemon, amber, and sandalwood. Amazing fragrance. Still smells pretty good, but it's definitely weak, much weaker than the original. AZZARO pour Homme at number 20. Number 19, CARON pour Homme de CARON. You know, this is a no-brainer. It's a very cozy experience. Launched in 1934, yes, that old, like it's almost 100 years old. Very historic fragrance. It's been around forever. And also, launched as a male fragrance, now I think the fragrance itself is a very unisex offering because it does feature, you know, lavender with vanilla and also some musk in there. So it's a very cozy wear, a great bed scent, and I think it still smells great today. It's somewhat like a warm fougere, like a barbershop-y experience because it has that lavender experience here. So CARON pour Homme de CARON at number 19. This next one at number 18 is a fragrance I wore quite a bit of, but then it got discontinued. But recently I did a video overview of this house and did a ranked list of some of my favorites. Found out that it was back. I think it's back permanently, but it could be just an online exclusive or a boutique exclusive. This is Jo Malone's Wild Fig and Cassis. One that I absolutely loved. I thought it was a great fig fragrance. It was lightly fruity, but very green and mossy, and it had woods in it, it had pine, it had musk. And it had that cassis. It's got a light kind of fruitiness, very light. But it's such a great fragrance, awesome fragrance. Number 18. You know, I did not say what year Jo Malone was launched. It was in 2002. Jo Malone's Wild Fig and Cassis. Moving on to the house of HERMES at number 17. It's Eau d'Orange Vert, but I am featuring the CONCENTRE version because I like what this particular version is in comparison to when I first wore the fragrance as the original Eau d'Orange Vert. Has now become a little weaker, so they've launched a concentrated version of it. But what I like about this one is woody and very orangey, but it has this kind of bitterness there. Almost smells like petitgrain leaves. If maybe there's no petitgrain leaves in here, but to me it does. Very clean and woody and orangey with some aromatics thrown in of the basil. This was launched in 1979 and it still smells great today. And as I said, this is the version, the concentrate version. So a great smelling fragrance that I really love at number 17. Moving on to the house of MAITRE Parfumeuer Gantier at number 16, it's Ambre PRECIEUX, launched in 88. Probably one of the best amber fragrances, but also spicy, also aromatic, and vanillic and balsamic. It's a great smelling amber fragrance, and it has great lasting power. It's intense and perfect to wear, and I think it's one of the best fragrances that has ever been made. It's, you know, kind of historic because the guy who started this fragrance house originally started L'Artisan Parfumeur, sold that house, launched this. He's no longer with us, but he's left a great fragrance for us. MAITRE Parfumeuer Gantier. Ambre PRECIEUX is a wonderful fragrance, one of the best fragrances ever made, at least to me, of all time, I think. Moving on to the House of Creed, it's Royal Oud at number 15. You know, I absolutely love the way this fragrance smells. It was the very first Creed I bought, and I'm obsessed with the way it smells. It's just very, very original and a great smelling fragrance. Sure, it seems a little thin and it might not have the greatest lasting power, but I think it's one of the best fragrances ever made. I'm more caring about the smell here, and it's a darn good smelling fragrance. It's actually an excellent smelling fragrance. But Royal Oud launched in 2001. It's just a little over 10 years old, and it does feature cedar, pink pepper, sandalwood, musk, angelica, galbanum, lemon, and oud. The oud is very, very faint here, but there's a little bit of a, you know, ashy, tobacco-ish touches in there as well, but it's a fantastic smelling fragrance. Royal Oud by Creed at number 15. If you're wondering if the fragrances are for men or for unisex, all that information is in the info box. Check over there and then you'll find out. But moving on to number 14, a fragrance from 1973. It's HERMES 900. Absolutely an amazing fragrance. And to this day, the stuff smells amazing. It's kind of the male counterpart to Clinique's Elixir. Aromatics Elixir. I drew a blank there for a minute, but this is a very, very great smelling fragrance. It's a Hermes is kind of a flank, not a flanker, I should say, but definitely an Hermes creation and very, very masculine with rose and civet and oak moss. I would say this is kind of like a chypre style fragrance. It also features carnation and patchouli and aromatics and flowers. Very, very nice smelling fragrance. HERMES 900. If you know of Aromatics Elixir, you definitely should know about that one because it is slightly bit masculine than Aromatics Elixir, which I always thought Aromatics Elixir is pretty masculine to begin with. Moving on to the house of Mugler at number 13, it's B-Men. From 2004, I think this is one of the best fragrances, and this is discontinued, so you'll have to find a bottle at the discount, not the discounters, but at places that sell, you know, discontinued fragrances. But I think it is an amazing creation from the house of Mugler. I don't think it did very well, and it kind of discontinued towards the end of the 2000s. But I'm obsessed with the way this one smells because it has that licorice anise note in here, and I love that, you know, experience in fragrances. Kind of adds a green booziness and spiciness, and it's lots of spices here in addition to the licorice and the anise, which also features patchouli, vanilla, leather, cedar, violet, vetiver, and musk. A great smelling fragrance. B-Man from the house of Mugler. Awesome, awesome release. Moving on to the house of Annick Goutal, or Goutal Paris as it is known now. At number 12, it's Eau d'Adrienne, and this is the Eau de Parfum version. This is a great lemony experience. Tart, juicy, sour, a little astringent, kind of a lemony citrus fragrance experience. Launched in 1981, and I've been a fan for a long time of this one. It's lemons, cypress, citron, grapefruit, mandarin orange, aldehydes, and ylang ylang. If you like tart fragrances and tart citrusy fragrances, you must get your nose on Goutal Paris's Eau d'Adrienne. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to find the Annick Goutal bottle versions of that fragrance, but maybe you will. A great smelling fragrance. I speak a lot about that one. Moving on to number 11, it's the House of Javoy. It's psychedelic. Again, these are the greatest fragrances of all time, so there could be discontinued, but this one's definitely still selling. This is a great patchouli fragrance. Lots of patchouli here with amber, vanilla, labdanum, geranium, rose, and musk. This is that chocolate cakey patchouli experience. Like it has a gourmand quality to it, and even though it's lots of patchouli with, you know, balsamic and ambery notes, very, very delicious and very, very long lasting. Javoy Psychedelic. It's a dream fragrance. I love that particular fragrance, and I love piling it on. It smells great. Moving on to number 10, a fragrance from 1966. It is for men. This is Eau Sauvage from the house of Dior. Again, this is a very citrusy fragrance, not as astringent or tart as the Eau d'Adrienne, but still has some tartness there. But it's also not just about the citruses. There's lots of lemons here with jasmine, there's bergamot, there's basil, there's rosemary, oak moss, coriander, carnation, patchouli, and vetiver. So there's an aromatic edge to it, an herbal quality to it, an earthy, woody experience as well with lots of citruses. So it smells really, really great. And, you know, maybe it is a little classic. It was reformulated in the early 2000s, I believe. So they did a great job with it. It's very modern, but still kind of has the classic touches. Eau Sauvage at number 10. That's from the house of Dior. At number 9, go into the house of Guerlain. This is Heritage in the Eau de Toilette concentration. This one's from 1992. An awesome fragrance, a great fragrance from this house, one of the best. You know, I had to pick one, and you know, I was gonna pick this or L'Instant de Guerlain Pour Homme Extreme. I decided to go with this one because I really like this one, and they have kind of like diluted L'Instant de Guerlain Pour Homme Extreme, but that might end up in the part 2 video. But this one to me is an amazing experience with patchouli and sandalwood, with lavender, geranium, juniper berries, amber, and oak moss, and I love wearing it. It's very classy. It's kind of like a amber fougere style a little bit. So it does have these kind of barbershop touches, but it's a lot more complex than just like a barbershop fougere type experience. Guerlain Heritage in Eau de Toilette at number 9. Alright, moving on to the house of Tom Ford. It is Tobacco Vanille. You know, this is probably the most popular, if not one of the most popular fragrances from Tom Ford. It's one of the early launches from this house, and it still stayed, you know, intact. It's like a lot of people wear this particular fragrance and enjoy it, and I think they did a great job with this particular fragrance with the tobacco with the vanilla. It's a great combination. This is from 2007, and it features tobacco, vanilla, spices, cacao, tonka beans, dried fruits, and woods. The combination is really great. The vanilla is dry, a little syrupy, in contrast with that kind of like ashy tobacco, with those spices, a little fruitiness, and a little chocolate. Wow fragrance. Number 8, one of the best fragrances, greatest fragrances of all time. It's Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanille. Moving on to the House of Mugler once again. I've got Tom Ford and Mugler on here twice today. This is Mugler's Amen. I wore so much of this stuff, a lot of it, but it is a little diluted now. It's not like it used to be. It's not as beefy as it used to be. It was a lot thicker, a lot more dense, and very long lasting. This fragrance, if you sprayed it on, you'd smell it 2 days later. Literally very powerhouse-ish. But still, one of the greatest fragrances of all time. Launched in 1996, it features caramel, coffee, patchouli, vanilla, honey, milk, tonka beans, benzoin, lavender, and mint. You know, it's kind of like that men's take on the Angel, the original Angel, which this used to be called Angel Men. They changed it to Amen. But it's gotten like the gourmand touches there, but it's been like made into more of like a masculine, with that kind of like a tar-like note that was in here. It's not there anymore. It's kind of been removed, but you know, it's gotten very diluted. But still, when you smell it, it'll remind you of the original fragrance. Mugler Amen at number 7. What a wonderful fragrance that was. This next fragrance, also one of my all-time favorites. I wore so much of it in the 80s. Guy Laroche's Drakkar Noir. Man, it's so good. You know, this still smells good in the current formulation, but recently I did pick up a early 2000s formulation of this stuff, and it is definitely a little bit more intense. This launched in 1982, and I always say this is the original, because there was a Drakkar before, Guy Laroche Drakkar. I never really got into that fragrance, or it wasn't as popular, but this is the one that was launched in 82, and I was 12 when this came out, and like 2 years later I started wearing it. I begged my mom to get me a bottle, and I've worn it since 84, although in the mid-80s and mid-90s I stopped wearing it. But I've come full circle to it. I think it's one of the best fragrances, one of the greatest fragrances of all time. That's Guy Laroche Drakkar Noir. An absolute love for that one. This next one is a discontinued fragrance. If you can find it, get it. Maison Francis Kurkdjian's Absolute Pour Le Soir. I think it's one of the best fragrances, one of the greatest fragrances of all time. I love this honeyed syrupy experience here. It's to die for. This came out in 2009 on its initial launch of the brand, Maison Francis Kurkdjian. It got discontinued early 2020. It was actually a boutique exclusive up until probably 3 years before or 4 years before 2020. It became a boutique exclusive, so you'd have to go there and get it. But the department stores like Neiman's was selling this when I first discovered it in the early 2010s. But this is a very honeyed, resinous, balsamic, still smoky amber fragrance, and definitely lots of musk in there. Absolutely very sexy and gorgeous to wear. Absolute Pour Le Soir from the house of Maison Francis Kurkdjian at number 5. This next fragrance is from the house of Serge Lutens. This is Fille en Aiguille. This is probably one of the best smells ever. One of the greatest fragrance creations of all time. From this house, this is probably the best fragrance that they've made, at least to me. There's a couple more. Ambre Sultan would be on the list as well. Maybe one more. But this came out in 2009. It features pine, incense, dried fruits, balsam fir, spices, bay leaf, leaf, vetiver. So it kind of screams like a very cold, chilly pine forest like experience thrown in with some warmth. There's some fire there. Maybe you're having some dried fruits and nuts together. You know, it's the holidays kind of a thing. So that's the kind of experience this particular fragrance kind of like conjures up when I smell it. So Serge Lutens, it's Fille en Aiguille, one of the best fragrances, one of the greatest fragrances of all time. I love that stuff. And moving on to the house of Tom Ford once again, it's Noir de Noir. This was the very first Tom Ford fragrance I ever bought. And to this day, I think it's one of the best smells. You know, it's one of the greatest fragrances of all time. This came out in 2007, just like Tobacco Vanille. And I think what they launched in the early days were some of the best fragrances from this house. This is amazing Chypre fragrance with rose, patchouli, truffles, saffron, floral notes of vanilla, oud, and oak moss. Just a very, very much delight to wear. One of the best. It's very, very sexy. It's got this kind of like chocolatiness in there, but it's truffles from the underground. But just a delight. Beautiful, beautiful fragrance. Tom Ford's Noir de Noir. Probably, yeah, like I said, one of the greatest smells ever. Moving on to the house of Frederic Malle, it's Portrait of a Lady. This is absolutely delicious. One of the best fragrances ever made. We just celebrated 10 years with this one back in 2020. And it's Portrait of a Lady is fantastic. It's very, very long lasting. It's rose, patchouli, incense, sandalwood with musk, benzoin, cloves, and raspberry. Just a really, really delight to wear. Spicy, patchouli, smoky, fruity rose. Wonderful. Portrait of a Lady at number 2. What's my number 1? So Dior Homme Parfum is ending up at number 1 quite a bit. This is one of the best fragrances of all time. One of the greatest fragrances of all time. Best, best, best. Best in the series. It's so thick and concentrated. Although this is the 2020 version, the 2014 was probably even better. I still have some. But, you know, it's a delight to wear this one. Very, very long lasting, you know, concentrated. The smell is thick. The iris, the powderiness, the leather, the rose. It's like makeup and lipstick. Beautiful fragrance. Deserves the number 1 spot. It's also very, very modern. That's kind of why it's ending up here. Some of the classic fragrances are not at the top because, you know, they're not more recent launches, so I'm not wearing them as much, but some of the ones that are more modern launches definitely are deserving the number 1 spot. But of course, I tried to make this list balance it out with classics and also modern ones, and most of these you can still find. The current versions might not be as great, but at one time these were amazing fragrances. That's why they're here. Some of the best fragrances ever. Going back to this also before I wrap up, somebody just recently told me this is off of the French Dior website. Does that mean it's permanently discontinued now? No more Dior Homme Parfum. Is this true? I don't know. But definitely deserves the number 1 spot. And I'm going to France and Italy in June. I hope to grab some more before this, you know, is definitely permanently discontinued. Anyway, number 1 is Dior Homme Parfum, and that's the list for you today. As I said, there is going to be a part 2, and in the part 2 I'm going to feature feminine fragrances, so it'll be a list of men's, unisex, and feminine fragrances as the greatest fragrances of all time. But what are your thoughts on these fragrances? Do you enjoy them? Do you like them? Do you hate them? What do you think about their current formulations, if they're classic fragrances? And what about the 2 discontinued fragrances, the permanently discontinued fragrances? Are you able to find them? Let me know, put a comment down. Also, let me know what are some of your greatest fragrances of all time, if they're not these. I'd like to find out. What do you enjoy wearing that you wear over and over and consider masterpieces? Put a comment down so I can find out. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. Oh yes, there's one more bonus fragrance, and I have to highlight this one because I did love this fragrance a lot. I discovered it off of my dad and my uncle. They both wore this one. This is from the House of Halston. It's a Z14. Absolutely amazing. You know, this particular version is from the late 2010s. Currently, I think it's gotten really, really butchered under Revlon. I don't know if this is under Revlon. I can't remember. I don't think it is, because in the late 2010s, no, late 2000s, they were still under a different group, and I think after that they got moved over to Revlon. But this to me is a cheaper fragrance for men. It's leathery with cypress, cinnamon, lemons, oak moss, vetiver, patchouli, bergamot, benzoin, cedar, and coriander. All the spices, all the aromatics, all the woods and leather together. An amazing smelling fragrance. Oh, this came out in 1976, by the way. So it's been around for a while, and you know, the brand's under Revlon now, so I don't think they are a great house that launches fragrances. So they go, you know, they're very, very cheaply made, so they're going to smell cheap as well. But that, like I said, that one I have had since the late 2000s, so it still smells really, really great to me, and I absolutely love it. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for another video tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.